This section of secondary transition assessments for students with disabilities will provide some foundational information for understanding the requirements. We will review the mandates around secondary transition with the emphasis on assessments. To begin, we need to understand how secondary transition services are defined. Taken directly from the language in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, secondary transition services are defined as a coordinated set of activities that is designed to be results-oriented and is focused on improving the academic and functional achievement of the student with a disability, to facilitate the child's movement from school to post-school activities. And this includes the areas of secondary education and employment, adult services, and independent living. While there may be similarities in secondary transition plans across students, we need to be careful about falling back on providing generic services to students. The development of secondary transition plans should be based on a student's individual needs, taking into account their strengths, preferences, and interests. And this can include things like instruction, related services, community experiences, the development of employment and other post-school adult living objectives, and, if appropriate, developing daily living skills and functional vocational evaluation. It's important to remember that a student's post-secondary goals in education, employment, and independent living must be based on age-appropriate post-secondary transition assessments and reviewed annually for adjustments, since it is likely that the student's strengths, preferences, and interests will change as they become older. This is a screenshot of the Secondary Transition Assessment section of the USBE Model Post-Secondary Transition Plan form. On this slide, you see a link and QR code to that form. Keep in mind that your IEP platform may look slightly different, but will include the same components to the plan for compliance. So you might be thinking, what is necessary for compliance around secondary transition assessment? First, they must be conducted beginning in the year when the student will turn 14. They must also be completed prior to the IEP. There are multiple ways you can provide evidence of secondary transition assessments having been conducted. The secondary transition assessment results can be summarized in the PLAF and the checkbox marked accordingly on the secondary transition plan. Or you can also mark the other checkboxes that indicate that secondary transition assessments are included in the student's file without writing a PLAF. Writing a PLAF with the assessment results provides more information about their strengths, preferences, interests, and needs. Since secondary transition assessment is the foundation of a compliant and quality secondary transition plan, there must be evidence that they were conducted and updated annually prior to the IEP meeting in which secondary transition will be discussed. Decisions regarding a student's secondary transition service needs should be based on secondary transition assessment data. The intention is that secondary transition assessments are an ongoing process as students' interests and needs change. The student's post-secondary goals, as well as all of the components of the secondary transition plan, must be based on age-appropriate secondary transition assessment. These assessments should provide information on a student's strengths, preferences, interests, and needs, or SPINs. When possible, students should be involved in the transition assessment process, as this can help students make connections between their IEP and post-school ambitions.